All right, in this video, I'm going to go over the top 5 tech jobs that you can get from a software engineer's perspective. So before we begin, I want to explain what criteria I am ranking these tech jobs on, like how I'm going to rank it. So, of course, pay is going to be a big factor. Like, why would you get a job if you're not getting paid? Quality of life is also important. If you hate your job, then what are you doing it for? I mean, you can always find a different job, so that's important. Also, skills needed is also going to be an important factor, because if it takes a lot of skills and takes a long time to get to that job, then it might not be worth it in the long run. And maybe demand as well, because if you lose your job, you always have to find a new one, and demand plays an important factor into that. And then the final thing that will, I guess, help rank these jobs is going to be my opinion. And this is, of course, going to be biased because my current job is a software engineer, and that may or may not be on the list somewhere. So there's a little bias here, but not too much. I try to be as unbiased as I can. All right, so let's start with number 5 on my list. And number 5 on my list is a cybersecurity engineer. And they're basically like the forest rangers of tech. And what I mean by that is, so forest rangers, what do? They help to prevent forest fires. Like, you know, Smokey the Bear always says, you can prevent forest fires. Well, cybersecurity engineers will work to prevent data breaches, which basically forest fires. Well, do you know what a data breach is? Well, you can think of Capital One, which happened last year in 2019, when a bunch of data was stolen from them and people misused it. So cybersecurity is kind of an interesting field in that the more data breaches that happen, the more demand for them will be. So if you want a job in cybersecurity, you better be hoping that there's more data breaches so that the company will want to protect the company's data more, and they're going to want to hire these more of these cybersecurity engineers. So the demand for cybersecurity engineers isn't as high as it could be right now, and it's because companies don't really care about data breaches until they happen. And I feel like they will happen in the future. I mean, that's not a threat or anything. I'm just saying that if there's data, there's going to be a way that it's going to be breached. I don't know how long it'll take, but it will be breached eventually because people don't secure it properly. So here's my pro tip. Go to companies that have had data breaches in the past if you want to work for them. So for example, like Capital One, they had a data breach in the past, so they're going to want to care a lot about cybersecurity. And consequently, they'll want to be hiring more people for cybersecurity, and they're going to be paying them more because they're going to value that work. All right, number 4 on my list is the machine learning engineer. So this is probably the newest field on this list, and newest as in like newest to the job market. So with the introduction of many cloud providers offering easy to use machine learning frameworks, I say easy, but easy enough to use frameworks, it's becoming easier and easier for people to build these machine learning products without really needing like a PhD in machine learning. So to give you an example on this, people can go and use AWS's SageMaker to learn how to, or to easily deploy machine learning algorithms with little to no knowledge about the internal process. They can just go there and press some mouse buttons and boom, deploy their algorithm. Pretty easy, right? And you might say, oh, as time goes on, it's going to become harder and harder to get a job in machine learning because the models and all the different algorithms are going to become more and more complex, so it's going to become more and more difficult to get a job in it. And you might say that, but you might also say that these cloud providers are going to make it easier as well. So as time goes on, it's going to become easier and easier for all these cloud providers. So Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're going to make all these jobs easier to get because the tools are there for you. You just got to use them. All right, number 3 on my list is going to be product manager. And you might say, oh, this isn't a tech job because you're not working on tech specifically, because you can have like product manager of like non-technical stuff, like non-technical products. I don't know. But I'm going to say product manager of tech to make it like a tech job. So this is the least technical job on the list in that you don't really need a technical degree to get this kind of job. You just need to know the product and know how to communicate effectively. Product manager is also probably the highest paying job on this list. And we'll get to that. So product manager might also have the lowest quality of life or lowest satisfaction, work-to-life balance on this list, because they are going to have to deal with the pressures of higher ups and corporate trying to push that product deadline as soon as possible, and they're probably pushing back. So there's probably a lot of pressure on these product managers. So you're gonna have to learn how to deal with pressure if you want to become one. So I said product managers are always going to have a high salary, and it's because they're always going to be needed in a general Scrum team or general team working on tech. And the reason behind this is if there's no one to help lead and direct the product in a certain direction, then it's going to go nowhere, of course. So someone is always going to be needed to present the product to the company, and that's what product managers will do. All right, number 2 on my list is going to be data scientist. So data scientist is such a broad term. Like, they could do so many different things. So that could be good, because then you have a lot of skills, right? And if you have a lot of skills, then you could be working a lot of different jobs. Because you have so many skills, one might say, oh, you would have a great quality of life and a great work-life balance, because you have this fallback of knowing, hey, I can always work on this instead, because I know this, because you have to know so many different things, so broad of I guess knowledge area, and that will make their work-life balance, I guess, a little bit easier sometimes. It really depends on the company, though. And then data scientists will also generally make more money than software engineers on this list. However, I didn't put them at number 1 because, spoilers for number 1, because the demand for data scientists isn't going to be as high as the demand for software engineers. And there's a reason behind that, because generally only big companies, or at least the bigger companies, will have enough data to really require having a data scientist work for them. Because if you don't have that much data, then what is the data scientist going to do? Just look at no data? I mean, data becomes more and more difficult the more you have of it, I suppose. All right, so now we're going to go to number 1. Are you ready for it? It is dumpster divers. No, I'm kidding. It's software engineers. So as you might have guessed, because that's what I currently am. So demand for software engineers is going to be the highest on this list, and that's not the only reason why I put it at number 1. And it's the highest because every single company needs a website. Every single company might need an app. And who's going to build this? Well, software engineers, and that's why the demand is so high for them. Every single company doesn't need a data scientist. Every single company, or at least most companies, will need, or that deal with software, can need software engineers. So the pay for software engineers might not be the highest because there's so many of them, and they're not, well, it depends on your specialization, but it's generally not going to be the highest out of the rest of the field, but you're still going to make much more than the average of all jobs, I suppose. And onto the quality of life for software engineers. So this really depends on the company. It's kind of hard to say what the quality of life for one job is going to be, but it depends on how much your company is going to set deadlines for new releases. If they have a new deadline out very often, then it's going to make your quality of life go down and your work-life balance go down, because you're going to spend a lot of your time working on your code and working on getting your product pushed out. So there's also a large variety in the positions that you could be working on as a software engineer. Like, for example, you could work on the user interface, the UI only, the backend only, just building the server out. You could maybe only specifically work on one language, like Python, Java, C++, C#. There's a bunch of different languages. Maybe you're only working on one platform, like Android phones, like Apple iPhones, web, VR. There's so many different fields. This is why I put number 1 as software engineer, because in a depression, software engineers will still be needed after it's over. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure you like the video and subscribe and whatnot. I'll see you later. Peace.